It was okay. Thanks for watching. Alright, listen. This is going to be a review of Star Trek Picard Season 3. I say review, I'm not going to give it a number score, but I'm going to talk about it. I was pretty dead set against watching this thing, because Season 1 was terrible, and Season 2 I didn't even bother watching. I had only heard about how, bad it was. So, this was truly the final frontier of trash. Except it was kind of good. Not great, but kind of good. And, some of you know that Star Trek TNG is, my favorite show of all time. I talk about it maybe too much. And, getting another go with the original cast, and pretty much all of the original cast, was amazing. If only it was better written. But that's the problem. I guess we'll start at the beginning. Listen, many of you know, if you've watched my stuff before, you know how I feel about new Trek, which is to say the new series of Trek. The multiple series, like Discovery, and Picard Season 1 and 2, and even the movies from J.J. Abrams. Those at least were entertaining, action schlock. They weren't particularly amazing, but they were just, the first one and the third one were decent to watch. Into Darkness, to me, was just hot garbage. So I've been very vocal about how much I had to stop watching Discovery and how Picard Season 1 actually injured me, emotionally. So I wasn't really looking forward to watching this. Everything that has been said about, the new Trek stuff from everywhere else, Red Letter Media, can't escape them. They're just, that's what they do, is they talk about this stuff too. But it's true. I mean, it's just really like children in space crying, saying, fuck yeah, science. Math is the answer. Just doing dumb action shit. Talking like they belong in the year 2023 or, 5 years ago. And just generally being dumb. The scripts are... Listen, there have been good episodes of Discovery. I watched a couple. I'm not going to say it's all bad. And if you like it, I'm glad you like it. I understand that people have different tastes. For me, I wasn't into it. I actually got tricked into watching Star Trek Lower Decks. Yeah, we'll just call it tricked. And I will say for a comedy cartoon, it wasn't bad. There's definitely episodes that were very... You could tell the person who runs the show actually likes Star Trek. But my favorite is TNG. Deep Space Nine is my very, very close second. Do love the original series, especially the movies. And Voyager is good, and Enterprise is good. Maybe not great across the board, but good. However, Voyager and Enterprise are Shakespearean compared to some of the stuff I've witnessed in Picard Season 1 and some of the stuff I've seen in Discovery. I know Discovery might have even gotten worse for some people, I've heard, as it went on. And I haven't bothered watching much of the other stuff. Strange New Worlds is fine. I need to watch more of it, but that felt the most like original Star Trek, and it had some good casting, good characters here and there, and it harkens back to the original with Pike and everything, and that's fine. It didn't blow me away, and it still had the stink of new Trek on it. Kurtzman. For those that don't know, Alex Kurtzman, who I think co-wrote the movies with J.J. Abrams, he got the keys to the kingdom for Star Trek, and then they started making new stuff, which I like to lovingly call Star Trek, because it was so fucking bad. And essentially, okay, I'm harping on how bad all of it was, and again, Strange New Worlds was definitely better. Lower Decks had some genuinely good episodes that wasn't just screaming. There's a lot of screaming, but less screaming. And Picard Season 1 was a travesty, and by all accounts, Season 2 was maybe even worse. That brings us to Season 3, and you'll see the image on the screen is the logo. Well, it's the art for it. True story, I downloaded the image because I wanted to have it up on screen, and I don't know why this happened, but this is just how it ended up. this is just what it looks like when I downloaded it, and I just said fuck it, and I left it because it kind of represents, in my mind, that's like the perfect representation of Picard season 3. It's warped. It's still the original cast, but it's like kind of skewed a little bit. I'm looking for meaning where there is none. But the point is, I liked season 3. I didn't love it. We can talk about it a bit. Essentially, I avoided watching it because season 1, like I said, upset me, and season 2, I didn't bother. Okay, you've heard that 3 times, but the reason I stress that is because I was very, very adamant that season 3 was going to be a piece of shit. Just because they were dangling the full cast in front of me doesn't mean that it was going to magically change the writing. However, fellow by the name of Terry Matalas became the showrunner, and turns out he likes Star Trek. So it seems like some of the people that were writing Star Trek previously didn't know it or like care about it as much, and Terry Matalas seems to actually be a fan and someone who knows his stuff. Maybe the people he has around him also do, because the first thing I noticed was it's not as disgusting and dark and fuck you. Like, characters don't like tell Picard to go fuck himself, which is great. That's a little bit of a change, but I think a good change. And the characters feel more like themselves. And that to me is like, when I watched the first couple episodes, I said, all right, it still smells like new Trek. I can smell the Kurtzman, and I can smell how, like, everything's gonna be dark, including the bridge of the Titan has to be dark. But yet, Picard felt more like Picard. Riker, Jonathan Frakes, is always very charismatic and very good, and he is especially good here. And I feel like he really got comfortable with the role again. And he just felt like Riker. And there's less emphasis on the newer characters, and when they are, they're not too bad. So I was already, like, the first couple episodes in, I was a lot more, like, I was still reticent, and I was a little worried, but I was still, at the very least, I was set in a better place mentally for it, because I felt like the characters felt like themselves. And even if the story looked like it was gearing towards, like, dumb action revenge plot, you know, I still love Wrath of Khan, and I'm down for, you know, a self-contained plot in a Star Trek show, as long as it's decent, you know. And even if it is dumb revenge, I would prefer if it wasn't, but I'd prefer, obviously, but different storylines, but I would like a revenge plot to be written well. I don't know if we fully got that with the show, but it wasn't bad. And then there's a lot of plot conveniences to get the characters together. But let me rewind for a second. And let me tell you that the reason I ended up watching this is because of recommendations from my audience and from people who know me, that know how I feel about Star Trek. But especially, and this is the elephant in the room, Red Letter Media, Mike and Rich ended up saying they loved the show, which kind of blew my mind because they hated seasons 1 and 2. They had blood in their eyes and lasers coming out of their face, and they were dressed up like clowns for some of their videos. And then I didn't watch the show at all until it was completely finished. I watch not all, but some of the Red Letter Media video, and I get to a point where Mike said, I unabashedly loved the whole season. And that's not to say, I've since watched the whole review, that's not to say that they thought it was perfect, but it looks like they enjoyed it. And I said to myself, okay, if they liked it, and they're very, very critical of this Star Trek Picard shit, I have to give it a shot. Now, I know the consensus is Vinny sees Red Letter Media, Vinny gets opinion from Red Letter Media, and on some level that's true. I won't deny it 100%, but I don't agree with them all the time. I've famously have said The Matrix Resurrections, I just don't get it. I didn't like it. I kind of was really disappointed by it. And Mike and Jay seem to really like it. Almost love it. Just because it was kind of meta. And it's like, just because something is meta doesn't mean it's like good. And so I don't always agree with them. And that said, though, Mike is a huge TNG fan, and I wanted to at least see, like, okay, is this real, or is he being emotionally manipulated like he said he was? So I took to watching the show, and yeah, there's some emotional manipulation. I mean, you could argue all fiction is some form of emotional manipulation, and that's where it becomes kind of a deeper conversation. You know, is this actually a good show, or does it check all the right boxes with the characters and have like a little bit of reverence for them in a way that makes you feel like, oh wow, they're all back together. Wow, there's the Enterprise D. Obviously spoilers, by the way. Obviously. So don't watch this from here on out if you don't want specific plot details spoiled. But after the dumpster fire of the previous stuff, and even like seeing Spock in the movies become like an emotional goblin man who just punches Khan in the face, and like Khan's awful, and some of the other like versions of what they were doing with the old characters were great, but like it's still different enough. But here's a cast where everyone is still around, and they are good in the show. The acting is actually very, very good. And they give them things to do where they actually feel like they're all useful. They feel like their old selves. Like Deanna Troi has to use her empathy, her empath skills, and it works. Like it kind of makes sense in the story. The story doesn't make sense, mind you, but for whatever contrivances they're doing in this overarching insane story to get the characters to this point, at the very least they feel useful. Geordi, takes care of like the old starships, and he refurbished the Enterprise from the Prime Directive. He had to get it from Viridian 3, and he got it, and he melded it with the Syracuse. So it's the Galaxy class. The saucer section is the classic Enterprise D, and the rest of it is a different ship. It makes sense. Like that makes sense. And Geordi, being who he is, he was great. He felt like Geordi. I really liked Geordi's daughters, the LaForge girls. They were fantastic. I think one of them was actually LeVar's daughter. She was good. Sydney LaForge was great. Jack Crusher, who was a little bit, I don't know, I was hot and cold about the performance, but not even the performance, but just the character. And I was worried that it was going to turn into that's the MacGuffin. Jack Crusher is kind of the MacGuffin of the whole thing. And then they do this whole Borg DNA thing with him, and it's Picard's son, and he has to be a father. And it felt kind of forced to like, by the way, Picard's a father. But I thought it was handled well enough, and the conversations between the two worked. And even though Jack Crusher is kind of like, a loner jerk man, there's development. And he's not so much of a jerk that he tells Picard to go fuck himself. And as a result, I was more endeared to him than I expected. So that was good. I'm skipping around a bunch. It's hard to gather my thoughts, but other than that, the original cast was all great. They all were. Worf was funny, maybe a little too funny in some spots, but he's a comedic character, weirdly enough. He's the heavy who's also comedic, and I've always loved Worf, and I think he is actually pretty good in the show. Michael Dorn is great, always, and he can still pull it off, and if he wanted a Worf show, give it to him. I'm fine with it. But at the same time, I can see that some of these cast members probably don't want to come back again, and truthfully, this is a good way to leave them off, which is to say nothing new. Just bring them back to the show. The end of All Good Things was them playing cards around a poker table. The end of this show is the same thing, which is, in my opinion, to say, all right, well, the movies were a mistake, especially Nemesis. And I like First Contact like way more than Mike does from Red Letter Media. I think it's a fine movie. It's fun and it's not bad. Yeah, it's action schlock, but it works for me. That was my first exposure to Star Trek aside from Generations, believe it or not. And I still will like that movie and its soundtrack and stuff. But getting them back into the poker table and having them play cards again, to me it's just nice. It's symbolic. And it's also kind of like, well, fuck seasons 1 and 2 of Picard. It seems like they just minimized as much of that as possible. Like, the dumbest shit in the world happened in season 1. And even though it's referenced and Picard is still a fucking android or something, it works because they don't mention it too much. And he just feels like Captain Picard, but older. And that was nice to see. Patrick Stewart is very good in the role. So that was all good. I mean, Data, getting him back, but then not doing the CG or the de-aging, I was fine with it. But the explanation for how they got there and like how he was like the security system was kind of fucking bonkers. It's weird. I get what they were going for, but I'll tell you what. After a while, my brain just started turning off to the dumb shit. Not to say that I was like happy that dumb shit was happening and like plot contrivances with the Borg and the Changelings. By the way, I appreciate the Changelings being brought back. They were one of my favorite villains in all of Star Trek, and the Thing kind of energy of the DS9 episodes was just phenomenal. I'm glad they brought that back. But truthfully, you know, a lot of the villain stuff wasn't amazing. Amanda Plummer was fine. She was good. But then when they got to the Borg, I was like, yeah, of course it's the Borg. And they kind of retconned some stuff. But the contrivances to get the things to happen, at the very least, when the things do happen, and for example, when you get Data back, it's Brent Spiner at his current age. So he doesn't look like he did when he was in his 30s, of course. And so Data doesn't either. He's like a synth. You know, it's a different type of android. And yeah, it was fine. He was good. And seeing him kind of get closer to being human was earned after the disrespect. I feel like season 1 of Picard was like just disrespect. Wasn't that big of a deal, but it was just not good. And Nemesis was also just trash. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that movie ended up being trash, and I think that also goes back to why Picard season 1 wasn't so great. There was a lot of apparently the clout of the actors, especially Patrick Stewart, and to a lesser extent Brent Spiner. This is all hearsay, by the way, where Stewart wanted to do more with the scripts, and he wrote himself as an action hero. And Spiner did some of the same stuff with Data, like to emphasize his role. And, you know, that means a lot of the other cast got pushed aside. And really, in an hour-and-a-half movie, yeah, it's understandable. You've got like 7 or 8 primary cast members plus a villain. It can be hard to give everyone something meaningful, which is why Riker had to fight a monster, just a random monster man, like to give him something to do. So that aside, though, I think seasons 1 and 2 of Picard, people like to blame Kurtzman, but apparently there's a lot of Stewart. He was like, I don't want to wear a spacesuit. And he didn't want to wear a spacesuit, and he didn't, you know, want to be the old Captain Picard. He wanted to do a different thing, and I think he had stuff he wanted to say via the shows. And clearly that didn't work out so great. And so for whatever reason, they gave the show to Terry Matalas, and I guess Stewart at that point was just like, all right, whatever. You know, that seems to be the consensus. I don't know how true that is, but that's something that has been discussed about the show. So in that sense, the show just tries to do right by the characters, and I think it mostly succeeds, and it was really nice. I mean, I'm being kind of negative, but the truth is it was really nice to see the actors together. I know they're all really like close in real life, which is just fantastic to hear. I don't know why, just nice. But I like seeing them together on screen. I like the little quips of, Data learning to adapt to his new thing. Like I said, Riker was great. Beverly Crusher, Gates McFadden got a lot to do. Like, actual dramatic acting, which was nice. And she had this whole thing with, Picard and their lost romance that it really kind of worked for me. Nothing was perfect, mind you, but it was good. And then, obviously Worf and Geordi were great. The thing is, Seven of Nine is one of my favorite characters. I thought she was fantastic this season. Jeri Ryan is a wonderful actress, and she was great this season because she had to learn some stuff. She had a bit of a character arc. And she had to, she played a supporting role, but in a meaningful way. So that was good. Even Raffi, which is a new character, who is just overly dramatic all the time. She was, not that she necessarily was amazing, but she was better than season 1. I don't know about season 2, but I thought her and Worf had a decent enough dynamic. The characters all seemed to treat each other with respect, which was mind-blowing. It's like, wow, that's nice. It still didn't feel 100% like Starfleet. Like, Starfleet is this optimistic kind of view of humanity that I always really liked. And whenever they start bringing Section 31 into it, it just kind of ruins some of the fun for me, the effect of it. And I don't mind a darker Starfleet, but there's something about the original series and our early TNG and late TNG even, where Starfleet just seemed so inspirational. Like, there's an aspiration for people to be a part of it, just to contribute and to explore and to better humanity. And I really like that. And, we're still on the border of that and fuck you, Starfleet. So that was kind of noticeable. But like I said, the peripheral characters were pretty good. By the end of the show, it kind of distills into the Enterprise flying the Death Star while Beastie Boys plays. No, but someone did an edit. It was funny. But no, it's the Death Star trench run from Star Wars Return of the Jedi. And they're just flying through the Borg cube and they shoot the thing. And it, devolves into action. It's fine. It hits all the right beats. I can see how people, this show got some buzz because it's actually way better than most of the new Trek stuff, according to many, myself included. And I can see why, because even if you view it as its own thing, it works from start to finish. It's not the deepest show. It doesn't it doesn't bring me to some of those amazing episodes of TNG that I love so much. But what it does is, over its episodes, 10, I think, it gets you from point A to point B, gets all the characters together, gets them playing cards, and you get to see where they're at now in their lives. And it's generally well done. You can pretty much ignore seasons 1 and 2. They explain most of the important stuff, and even if you don't need to, even if they don't and you don't get it, it doesn't matter because it's just they're doing their own thing with this season. So again, you could just watch it from the end of All Good Things, having seen maybe a couple of the TNG movies, and then go straight to season 3. It won't be as good as the show, but I kind of think generally it's better than the movies. Especially Nemesis and Insurrection. And I like aspects of all 4 movies. First Contact I like the best. Generations I like because it was closer to the show. But there's a lot of stupid shit in there too. Insurrection felt like the show, but also was not that great. And Nemesis is just a mess, but at least it had some good character moments. This was generally, with the character stuff, better. And bringing back, the changelings was cool. But that brings me to, Mike and Rich like to use the word member berries. To me, it's just references, nostalgia. You can call it whatever you want. I think it's an overload. Maybe not as much as the fucking Mario movie, but it doesn't bother me if it's done with some care to the way it's done. Like, if it makes sense in the story, sure, okay, they got to get the Enterprise D because they need a ship that's not connected to the network. Yeah, cool. That's fine. That's all I needed. As long as it, as it works in the context of the story, I'm happy. And I feel like most of the references did. Some of them were a little bit more blatant. But again, the Mario movie is just point at the screen Leo the whole time. And yet, it didn't bother me either there because it's a movie about a show, or sorry, about, well, maybe not the show, but about the games. And the games have 30-something years of history. And of course, they're going to reference some of it. And I think compared to the Mario movie from, 93, it's nice to see that the people making this actually know the source material and respect it. And it's for the fans. It's not like... It gets tough because is it the selling point versus is it just a bonus, right? And the hypocrisy of like the Star Wars stuff being all, remember that? Remember Han Solo? Remember him? Remember this? And then the Star Trek stuff is very similar. I understand how that becomes a very tight line to walk. And I know that Mike and Rich even called themselves out on it. Like, it's okay when Star Trek does it, but not when Star Wars does it. And I think the difference here is, honestly, this just felt a little bit more respectful to what we watched growing up. And it felt at least like it was an attempt to set things right. I'm not saying it was perfect. I liked it way less than Mike and Rich. And I like it less than a lot of other people online that I've seen, including some friends, but I did watch it, and I didn't stop watching it, and I had a smile on my face for at least some of it. And when it pissed me off, it didn't piss me off so egregiously that it made me actually angry, which kind of happened with season 1 of Picard. Discovery didn't make me angry, it was just like, I laughed at it because it was just, there were moments where I was like, how is this real? How did someone like approve this? So yeah, it's kind of hard to. I'm not exactly a professional like critic, I'm just some guy that likes the show, and I didn't write any notes down or anything. I saw it a week ago, but I'm just happy that it wasn't shit completely, and I'm happy that we got to see the characters back together, contrived as it may have been. It was nice seeing them like do things and interact. The special effects were great. Notice that's the last thing I talk about just because everything looks good. Even Discovery, Star Trek Discovery looks good. They just make good-looking shows. That's like the last thing I care about. But it was nice seeing the ships and seeing, the set of the Enterprise. It was nice to see that stuff again. So in that sense, it was a success. And the music was good, and that, that's where the emotional manipulation thing comes from again. And again, I don't know if that's just all movies or what, but hearing the theme from First Contact, hearing the theme from Voyager once in a while, like little stingers, like when Worf shows up, they play a kind of slow version of the Klingon fight music, and it's really good. Stuff like that, I find, was effective at making me feel something. And, it didn't disappoint too much in that sense because, let's say, for example, Geordi was introduced. Hey, remember me? I'm Geordi LaForge. And he shows up, and then the only thing he has to do is punch bad guys in the face with a blaster, or shoots them in the face, and then, like, repairs a ship, and then that's it. But here, they sit around a table sometimes, they discuss options, they, at one point, Geordi doesn't want to help Captain Picard. And I like seeing that dynamic, and then when they do eventually get together, it felt like, the old cast sitting around a table discussing alternatives, discussing their situation. And even if some of the dialogue wasn't perfect, it was generally good enough that I legitimately had moments where I felt like I was watching a pretty good TNG episode. And I was happy about that. So, and then by the end, they kind of maybe semi-set up like a different show with Jack Crusher and Q or something. I don't really need that. That's fine. I mean, it wouldn't be terrible to see Seven of Nine as a captain of a ship. That reminds me, Shaw was great. Captain Shaw, the original captain of the Titan, is a cantankerous dipshit from, what was it, Chicago? And he was just fantastic. Not impressed with Picard and Riker. Very, very blunt to them while everyone else treats him like a legend. However, he was still respectful enough and, professional enough captain that he did his job. And by the end, there is some character development there. And the actor was fantastic. And it worked. It worked for me, weirdly enough. Especially him in Seven of Nine. I thought that was a really nice connection. And then seeing her kind of, take the captain's seat from him was actually, I thought, pretty well done. So he was great. Sad that he got killed because I would have liked to have seen him again in the future, but oh well. So yeah, and then Ro Laren shows up, and she wasn't even, in that much of the show, but it was just the right amount. And that to me was some of the best written shit in the entire show, was Ro Laren shows up. Here's this kind of semi-minor character, but they wanted her to do more. And she, Picard is distrustful because Picard's like, is she a changeling? And so he probes into her life and asks her private questions that only he would know the answer to, and her. And then it turns into their conflict that they originally had, and then reconciliation, and then she's gone. And I don't know, I thought it was like a good way to play on the expectations of the viewer, and also to give you like a nostalgic look at this character, but with purpose. And she served her story purpose perfectly. So that was cool. But again, a number of contrivances to get these characters where they needed to be on a lot of levels. And I don't, I'm getting a little sick of nitpicking every little detail, and it all has to be perfect with lore and everything. However, because it just takes up so much brain power, I do want a show to make sense. Like, plot holes are fine. I can deal with some plot holes once in a while. A lot of my favorite stuff has plot holes. There have been previous Star Treks that have plenty of plot holes, but the overall feel and story and character things are so good that the plot holes don't matter so much. It's easy to kind of like hand wave it. However, when your entire show is plot holes, and literally a plot hole in the sky that has like tentacle arms that come out of it, that can be a problem. So I'm willing to like kind of overlook and forgive, and this show is kind of riding a line between like, this is dumb and, oh, that's pretty good, or at the very least, it's dumb, but I understand why the writers chose that course of action. Anyway, I'm rambling. You heard what I had to say about it in the first 3 seconds of the video. It was okay. A lot of good stuff. A lot of cool things that happened with the original cast. Some of the new stuff was good. 7 of 9 was good. You didn't really get the Picard seasons 1 and 2 feeling from this show. Nor did you get the TNG feeling, but it's somewhere in between. Good music. Good performances. Like, actually genuinely really good performances, especially from the returning cast, and Amanda Plummer was good. And I thought it was not a waste of time. That was the best I could say for it. Whereas most Star Trek I've seen from, I guess, the end of Enterprise to now has generally felt like kind of a waste of time to me. Or at the very least, just a dumb action movie. This, I didn't feel like upset that I wasted my time or anything. I didn't feel like, I don't know, I didn't feel like the showrunner hates me. It sounds dumb, but yeah, it just felt like a a decent attempt to get the cast back together for one more thing that wasn't Nemesis and wasn't Picard seasons 1 and 2, and as a result, I thought it succeeded in a way that I couldn't have imagined a couple years ago, just because it ended up being decent. That's all it needed. And I guess my final point is, do we like this show, those of us who do, because the previous stuff was so bad? You know, if it had started, if Picard, the show, started with this season, would we have been like, oh, that wasn't that great? Or would we have been like, oh, that was okay, but it could get better? So, unfortunately, we're left with this. This is where we're at. This is what we have. And now it's done. I don't think we'll ever be seeing this full cast together again. Who knows? I could be wrong. Maybe money. Money is always an option for them. But I'm not too upset. I feel like it's a good place to leave them. They're playing cards. They're all in communication with each other. They had these adventures for one more time. And now it can be done. It's cool. So, yeah, not as good as TNG. Maybe a little bit better than some of the movies. And overall, maybe probably leagues above some of the other shit we've seen recently. Glad I watched it. What do you think? Genuinely. I will read the comments to this one because I'm curious to get your opinion. I may disagree with your opinion, you may disagree with mine, but genuinely, I want to see what people think, and I will respect how you feel about the show, even if you feel like it's way better than I think, or way worse. I'm just curious to see how you feel about it, especially longtime Star Trek fans. So, yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and I was going to do 20 minutes, and I did, was this 36? Also, kind of nice to see them in semi-uniforms again. I felt like that was missing. So, here it is, the shot of them on the Enterprise one more time. And some other characters are there too. Alright, take care. Thanks for watching, everybody.